So I'm Sue AnderBois. I'm running for City Council for Ward 3, and by day I'm a climate policy advocate and advocate for food systems.
Okay, so you're a climate policy advocate. We're sitting here on a beautiful 65-degree day in February in Providence. Not many of these in the world, not many days like this.
Yeah.
What does a day like this, I mean, aside from it being beautiful out, which is, and it's enjoyable, what does a day like this say to you as a climate worker?
A day like this is nerve-wracking, especially as we see, you know, the storm that's coming in a day, and we're going to see the temperatures plummet. It's like you try and enjoy these beautiful moments while they're happening, and also it's a harbinger. It's like the canary in the coal mine of like, this is coming. Like, this is not New England winter. It's still February. It's not March, it's not April. So for me, it's both like you try and enjoy it. I exercised outside today. I'm like trying to take advantage. I like being outside with you, but it's nerve-wracking and it's upsetting, and it's it's a sign of what's to come.
Yeah, right. All right. As a city councilor, what do you think you can do about environmental issues in that position, and what can Providence do from its position as a big city in a very small state?
Yeah, I think there's so many opportunities, and actually climate and environment are like one of the big reasons why I'm running for city council. So a few things I think we can do. So for the last couple of years, I've chaired the Providence Sustainability Commission, which used to be called the Environmental Sustainability Task Force, which was a mouthful. And I've been very supportive of the creation of the Climate Justice Plan, which the city made in partnership with frontline communities of color, particularly the Racial and Environmental Justice Committee. And it's an amazing plan. I think it's a national leader for how it was developed and what's inside. And also we have no funding to like actually deliver on what's inside of there. So a big priority for me will be passing and implementing policies and prioritizing things in the budget that can really implement that plan. Like I was just talking with some folks actually from Portland, Oregon, earlier this week or last week, sometime recently. Time is fluid. And they passed this thing called the Portland Clean Energy Fund, which is, I'm looking at how could this be relevant here in Rhode Island or Providence, but it's a very small tax on only businesses not like rooted here. So like, and that have like, I think for them it's $1 billion in sale nationally and some number of dollars sales locally. So like an Amazon or a Whole Foods or a Stop and Shop, these are the types of folks, a UPS, they would have a small tax that would generate revenue that then could be spent particularly on climate justice initiatives. And in Portland, it's raised tens of $millions a year for the last few years. Oh, wow. And it's a real source of revenue. And it really like scratches that itch of like, okay, well, you're not necessarily contributing in the same way small businesses are. Let's invest some of that money here in like our people, in training folks, in building solar in the port, in like all of the things. And so finding those kinds of like sustainable new types of funding streams that support the local work here and implementing things like the Climate Justice Plan, the Great Streets Plan. We have all these really great plans. We have to like implement them. We have to do them.
Yeah. I want to go two different directions, but I'll pick one. You talked about talking to impacted communities in Rhode Island to develop that plan. And one of the biggest impacts on the communities here in Rhode Island is the Port of Providence and the polluting industries there. There's no immediate 4, 8, or 12-year solution to this, really. Yeah. But where do we start to head? How do we start addressing the issues in the port? Yeah.
I think one of the ways, and this is going to sound super boring, but I think it's really important, we've been trying to get the Climate Justice Plan adopted in the city comp plan. Yeah. Because that affects all of the zoning for the city of Providence. And so if the ideals and the goals of the Climate Justice Plan around racial equity and climate justice, resilience to climate change, if those are baked into the comp plan, that's going to affect zoning. And so the zoning decisions are what can keep like really terrible polluting industries out of those neighborhoods. Right. And some of those technicalities have been what helped win the fights in the last few years. And so like we need that baked in. Like we need some of those we've been trying to argue this at the CPC, the City Plan Commission, of like how we get this included. And there's some technicalities of what the language needs to look like and things like that, and we'll keep working on it. But that kind of stuff, like, okay, how are the decisions getting made? Where are the decisions getting made? And zoning is a big piece of it. Right now it's zoned for that kind of stuff, and we need to say, no, that's not in line with our goals.
It's interesting because I know the zoning decisions that were made around that were relatively recent.
Yeah.
And like the people, one reason they were like hesitant or reticent about changes, I think, is because we've barely implemented the plan that they've worked on for a decade. And now, less than a decade later, we're saying, oh, by the way, that needs to change because we made some bad calls there.
Yeah.
And so that's part, that's just part of it. But, yeah, and you're right. We've had like maybe 1.5 victories in the court and a couple of bad losses, too.
Yeah.
And we're right now fighting that new LPG storage facility, and that people are up in arms about.
I agree. I think it's also about like listening and letting supporting the community around the port in the ways that they want support. Like I've been really impressed with our neighbors here in Ward 3. Of like when I talk to them about climate, they're asking, "What are you going to do about the port? Like, what are we going to do to support our neighbors in the port neighborhood?" And like we're not smelling that pollution here. Like not like when you drive.
Not like right. No, it comes here, and I think people should realize. If you're seeing an increase in asthma rates here, it's also related to that.
Yeah.
Fox Point, even East Providence, to be a part of the solution. Because East Providence is right across.
It's right across.
And they're closer to it than some neighborhoods in Providence.
Yeah.
And yet, very little is said in East Providence about this issue at all, from what I can tell. So.
Yeah. And we're not actually that far. Like, we're Rhode Island far, but like, as the crow flies, it's a couple miles.
Right.
And like, when the wind blows, like, we're breathing that too. But our neighbors who live close to it are like, really breathing it every day, and they can feel it in their mouth. Like I was talking to a friend who lives there, and she's like, some days you can like feel it on your tongue. Like
I've been down there where and I have minor asthma, but I don't go there without an inhaler in my pocket. Yeah. Because I'll be there and I'm like, okay, now I got to limp home because I'm feeling it, and it's all the way home I'm like, oh, I'm straining myself, and it's gross. I'll say this. I go to like the Save the Bay campus there. Yeah. And I walk out to the river, and I look straight ahead, and I look to the right, and it is gorgeous. It looks like what you would want everywhere. If you look to the left, though, it turns into an industrial wasteland. Yeah. And Save the Bay campus is like the dividing line. It goes into Johnson Wales and into Connecticut, some really nice areas. Sailboats and beauty. You go to the left, and it's just tragic stuff. So. How should we be thinking about that land? How should we be thinking about how to use that after we do the hard part of like eliminating most of the worst businesses and then cleaning up the incredible environmental degradation that exists here now? Yeah, I'm totally going to answer that and also say once you get past it, like my day job is at the Nature Conservancy, and we have these amazing scientists, one who lives like right up the block. And they do work in the Seekonk River so they go past that pollution, and then they go up the Seekonk, and there's like thriving fish populations in the Seekonk, and that's like where a lot of the juvenile fish are, and then they move into the bay. So like it has impacts like up and down, and like anyway, there is like once you get past the port on either direction, it opens back up. Sorry, so I felt like I needed to say that because it is like once you get past. And then I totally forgot what the question was. Just like what should that area look like? How should we develop it? Yeah. So I think like we do in other neighborhoods, it would be great for that neighborhood to lead what they want their neighborhood to look like. Like we're having the process with North Main and others. Like what's their vision? And I've heard from some folks that it includes like solar development. It could include housing. It's on like the beautiful coast. Like maybe they want to develop it in a way that like takes advantage of there being public access to the water. But really like finding ways to support them and how they're leading on like their leadership on what they want their community to look like. I know there's worries about gentrification. Yeah. Like that if we kick out all those polluting industries, suddenly Connecticut and parts of Warwick and Cranston that are really nice just basically expand. Take it all over, and all the people who live there right now with pollution are forced out, and they have to move to Quonset where there's more pollution, let's say. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do with that, but that kind of gets us into this idea of what do we do about issues of affordable housing, gentrification, how do we make a place nicer and not displace the people who are on fixed incomes or who don't make a lot of money? How do we do that? So what are your thoughts around those types of issues?